In this video, I talk about instructional design, the future of learning, customers versus students, and reflection. Welcome to number 7, episode 7 of the Ask Sabramowicz show, where you ask your instructional design questions and I, Anna Sabramowicz, answer them. Episode 7, this is a good one. Why? Because we got 2 questions. That's right. And also, I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but there's a huge storm outside. So if all of a sudden water starts leaking on me, don't worry, the show will go on. Okay, let's get to our first question.
Sherry's first question is, how is instructional design more aligned with the future of adult learning than with past methods?
Sherry, awesome question. Thank you. That is big. That's deep. So I'm going to try and answer your question. And of course, we're trying to understand each other through 140 characters. So hopefully I'm addressing your need here. Okay, so instructional design, ID, and how it's aligned more with the future of learning rather than the past. Well, there's a lot of things that are changing. There's a lot of demands that are changing. And I think this has a lot to do with the internet's having an impact on how much we iterate, how much we talk to each other as instructional designers. And also because of the vastness now of accessibility to information and education and learning, we have to start iterating on the things that we deliver because it's do or die right now, right? So we are evolving, the profession is evolving, but let me just quickly go over some major points that I think are having huge impact. And I don't think this is specific actually to adult learning. I think I think good instructional design, regardless of whether it's for adult learners or children, is always going to have to prove its value to that learner. And it may be that actually I think that maybe children don't have those expectations yet. So sometimes we may feel that we don't have to deliver on them because they don't expect them. But what I think is great is that adult learners, in most cases, especially in the continuing education sector, let's say, adult learners have more expectations because they realize how precious their time is, and they're paying money for these lessons that we're creating. And also what they're doing is they're evaluating the validity of what you deliver. And that expectation has almost led to the improvement, I think, the trickle-down impact on all learning. So now I'm thinking that all learning needs context. And that has really, I think, really been put forth a lot lately. And I think instructional design is starting to evolve where we really think about what is the contextual use of the learning experiences that we're designing. And more so now we're thinking about how to create, instead of that push of learning information, we're doing the pull, the integration, involving the learner in the creation of that knowledge, which is fabulous because it makes it more contextual for them, it makes it more relevant. And with all the data that we're getting now, and I'm not just talking about completion, I'm talking about how somebody applies the information that we're using, how long they spend answering some of the questions or experiencing some of the learning that we've designed for them. All that data, all that information, we can now use that to iterate on our work. Just like, I mean, with software, we're learning a lot of things from different disciplines like project management, software development, and all these things are where established processes have been established. They're actually feeding in to improve our own profession. And I think this is an awesome time to be an instructional designer because there's a lot of painful growth sometimes, but also a lot of really positive leaps. This one, and actually one of my colleagues on Twitter just recently, we brought this up, had this conversation about the shift from the student being this passive consumer and recipient of information, and mostly I think it has to do with, not to put anybody off, with higher ed institutions where the student is still not considered a customer. And the minute you make that mind shift that you are there because those students decided to be there, and that the onus is on you to provide them with a great experience. That changes so many dynamics on why you're even, the way you design, the way you deliver, and how you engage with people, because you're constantly trying to get in data from them on how they're using it and how they're enjoying it too. And a part of that design process now becomes, how do I enrich that experience so that when somebody leaves, they're not only satisfied, but they're also feeling like they got a lot of value from what you put together. And as I said, not just for adults, I think this could apply to all levels of learning. And the other thing is just competition, where you have a lot of stuff out there. Some of it is terrible, some of it is good, but the people will decide. So the cream will rise to the top, and as things become more, as our learning receives more feedback, and as we iterate on it, the people who are really taking all of these things seriously, who are really applying and iterating and considering the learner first, not pandering to them, not it doesn't mean that what you're doing is simply asking your learner what they want and then delivering that. It's about being an expert, deciding what is the best way to approach learning of a topic, but then also getting feedback to see what strategies you can incorporate to make that learning experience better. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I have a little puppy down here. I just got to show him to you because he's making a whole bunch of noise. Hold on. Come here, little buddy. There he is. Oh, gross. His name is Mr. Darcy, and he's my Chihuahua. Okay, you can go now. You can be quiet now. Okay, bye. No more noise. Shh. Good boy. Okay, next is our next question.
Sherry's second question is, when and how do you build reflection processes for learners into your design?
Sherry, awesome. Thank you for that question. Reflection is probably one of my favorite processes, and as much as it is my favorite out there as a learning tool, it's so underused. Anyways, so Donald Shawn, and I'll put a reference to a really awesome article that has to do with reflection, and he's also referenced there. He came up with this idea that reflection should be a process of iteration. So what happens is that it shouldn't be simply a way for you to think about something and then leave it. It is a process where you experience something, let's say a learning event, and then you reflect on that event as a learner, or whether as a consumer of that information. And then what you do is observe how this kind of approach worked for you, and plan the next time you are in a learning event or encounter that information, how you're going to either adjust what you're doing with your reflection, or how you're going to improve that process. I hope that made sense. Anyways, so let me get to reflection and when you would actually start using it. And I just want to clarify. There's two types of reflection. There's the one type of reflection you would do in a learning course that would be about yourself, like how you learn, what things help you learn, and what strategies make you a better learner. So, and maybe if working with other people makes you reflect better. So basically becoming extremely self-aware of your own learning process, which when you think about it is a skill that we probably want to have people experience from the very beginning, because it can apply to so many lifelong learning experiences, right? And then the other kind of reflection has to do with the actual activity, the actual learning that you're doing. And I want you to think about the analogy here is that, let's say you're watching a movie with somebody, another human being, and you walk out of that movie, or the movie finishes, and both of you walk out of there with a completely different idea of what the movie is about, or what the main point of that movie was. And that is because we see everything through this filter. We have our own ideas about how things work, our own little schemas, and then everything that comes in is basically filtered through that schema, our idea of the world, and then put forth through our schema. So the minute somebody gives us an alternative point of view that we'd never considered before, what's happening is what we can do, if we are the right kind of reflective thinker, is that we can either adjust our schema a little bit because things didn't exactly work out the way we had planned or the way we had thought, or we could simply interpret their version through our schema again and either confirm or deny what we initially believed anyways. It just depends on how open you are to those ideas. Now, when you're thinking about when you would actually, let's say in a learning event, when you would incorporate reflection, I'd say do it as soon as possible, because the effective reflection takes time, because most of us, myself included, don't do it on a regular basis. It's not a habit. And also, to get to a point where you're actually being quite honest with yourself as a learner, or really starting to challenge yourself as a learner through reflection, it takes time. It takes practice, and I think that, like I said, you want to address those schemas that your learners have right away, because basically what you're doing a lot of times is having them unlearn certain things through your learning. And really, when we think about what reflection is, as a learning tool, it's super awesome, because what it forces you and the learner to do is to see how that information already fits into their pre-existing knowledge, how they can anchor it into some event back there and say, okay, this makes sense because of this this situation I was in, and now I can kind of tie those things together, and helps me remember, it helps me understand it in context, and also it helps me make meaning of what it is. So everything that we encounter, we're kind of tying to other things if we're thoughtful about it, so that we can retrieve it later. And the meaning making, the process of translating it into our very own words, can be extremely powerful in helping you retain those new concepts. So I say what's really cool is that reflection doesn't always have to happen at the end. Because if, let's say you have your students coming in with a certain kind of schema about something they already believe in, then what is most provoking would be to have them reflect on a topic or come up with ideas of how they feel about it before they even learn anything about it. And basically what they're doing at that point is committing to something. They're writing something down about themselves, and they're committing to a point of view. And you can have them reflect during, so as in, let's say they're watching a video, you can have the video pause and have that person make a prediction about what they're thinking is going to happen next, or have that person think about how what they've already learned, how that's affecting their current schema. And then after, which is questions, and have them maybe put the concepts into their own words, or think about how they would use that information application. But if you have a before statement from them, and then you have an after statement from them, what is really useful is to go back to those before statements. Because people, after somebody's learned something new, and I've mentioned this in other videos, is that they have a very hard time thinking back to what they initially thought, how they initially thought. So by committing to this statement and actually being able to see that statement, the shift is actually even more profound, because now they're asked to examine this old point of view, this old way of thinking, with a new perspective, and it's blatant. So it can be a deeper form of reflection. Now, okay, now let's get into how you could do this. I suggest that if you are going to have learners participate in a reflection exercise, don't leave them to it by themselves, because reflection takes time, and reflection takes committed time. And to get people in the habit, you almost have to carve out that time and say, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to think about these questions. And let's do that. And let's commit. And once you kind of start that, and at the beginning it's usually quite painful, then it becomes a habit, and it becomes your mind becomes trained to get into that deep reflective zone. Also, don't leave it to chance. If you want people to reflect, guide them with questions, because you're staring at a blank page is overwhelming, and also a lot of us don't know where to start. So if you want to guide that process and maybe have the learners start off, come up with your own good reflective questions. And they don't have to be difficult, but they just have to be deep enough to make somebody think a little bit further beyond just the surface of your content. Okay, sharing. So there's this whole thing about, can reflection happen effectively in isolation? So if somebody's saying, oh, this is my learning style, or this is what I thought about this movie, and you reflect on it, are you kind of not basically regurgitating what you already know, and kind of you're in your own little silo? And I say, yeah, probably. So it's good to have reflections. Not necessarily, you don't have to evaluate them, but what is good is to always look at other people's perspectives on the same topic, and then, if possible, see if you can iterate on theirs and challenge their ideas. So there's a sharing component to reflection that is, I think, very useful. Okay, and how to do this? Now, it really depends on how complex you want to make it, or how easy. I'm seeing things like LearnChat do when they're doing Twitter chat. They basically, what you're doing is, it's a little too fast for deep reflection, but you are thinking about some topics, and also to encapsulate them in a Twitter type format is a really good exercise in itself. So it's a great way to distill ideas. Although it needs, for me, reflection is only effective if the learner is given time to think. They need time. Also, okay, I'm going to stay on this side. You could have a blog that the students participate in and answer questions and comment on each other's reflections, built-in comments in a course. There's also journaling, and I think journaling can be a beautiful thing if done right. So it could be a physical journal. It can also be something like OneNote or Evernote, where there's a daily reminder to participate in those activities. That's some of the work for you. There's learning portfolios where students can basically kind of have a portfolio of their thoughts and feelings. And also, when you have something like a learning portfolio, and even with something like Moleskine or OneNote, remember I talked about that concept of reflection being an iterative process. So it would be easy for you to go back and see how your reflection and the way you think and the way you learn has evolved over time. And I'm thinking visual reflection. It could be a group Pinterest board, or elaborating on a topic, finding ways to expand on it visually. That would be really fun. I'd love to see some of these examples if we ever apply them. And another one that's actually pretty simple is simply emailing people and saying, hey, give me some feedback, or answer these questions, and then following up with them to see how they've applied those steps and have them committed to some sort of action as a result. So this could be a several step process, and quite easily built and managed if you have the time. Sherry, I hope that answered your question, at least in part. Reflection is a huge topic, and like I said, we could go on, but I think I've shared enough. Also, I want to know from everybody else, how do you use reflection? What has been your one awesomest reflection moment where you really felt your schema completely change? What was it? I want to know in the comments below. And also, please use hashtag #AskSabramowicz to send me your next question on Twitter.